Hi, good evening everyone. So thank you so much to Sabah Society for the invitation to share with you tonight about some of my experiences. Some, because it's been 14 years now since I've been doing this, so I have tons and tons of stories. But tonight I'm only going to skim over the surface, because it's so deep, just as we heard from our first two speakers. The problem is huge in Sabah, and everything I say is interrelated with something else. And the issues about undocumented and about health have a very close affiliation with what I'm going to talk about today, which is education. So I'm a teacher. My heart is a teacher. So my concern when I started these schools was, how are we going to prepare these children for their future, not my future, but their future, and how are we going to handle this issue of lack of documentation, of statelessness, of marginalisation? How on earth can Sabah solve this problem with the numbers that we have here? So can I get the first slide, please? So my experience has been with these children, as I said, for 14 years. I actually live in their communities. I live in their houses. I share the meals with them. That's been my life for all these years. And to me, it's just part and parcel of life in Sabah, and I don't really think much about it, although some people might think it's a bit unusual that we saw the film a few minutes ago with the wooden boardwalks and the houses like that. To me, that's just normal, So I'm speaking from that point of view tonight. So just to be clear from the beginning that in the Etania schools, most of our children are undocumented and not stateless. Many are stateless, yes, but the majority are undocumented. Once you're undocumented, this leads to statelessness, So the children who come in from, let's say, Indonesia, many of them are undocumented. Their parents may have once had documents. They had perhaps Indonesian kartu keluarga, it's called. They may have not had a proper marriage certificate, that kawin kampung, and that doesn't hold water in Sabah. But the stateless children are mainly like the Filipino children, because they have been here for generations, and that becomes intergenerational statelessness. The lack of documentation can render a person stateless, but I noticed that in my families, many of them don't want to take documentation. They have this kind of like idealistic dream. One day I'm going to become a Sabahan. One day I'm going to become a Malaysian. But this is, if we face facts, this is not really going to ever happen to them at this moment in time. But they still hold on to this belief that they will get Malaysian citizenship one day. I don't want to kill their dream, so I just say, keep hoping. But I think you should apply for some kind of citizenship in the meantime. But they will not do this, Next slide, please. Oh, wait, just a moment. Can you just go back? So we often call these kids like the invisible children of Sabah. There are tens of thousands of them in Sabah. We don't know how many there are. Just to let you know that I've been doing this since 2014. Not one of my families have ever given any information to any research gathering data about children, undocumented and stateless children in Sabah. Not one. And that is thousands of families. There's nothing wrong with the methods of data collection. It's perfect. The problem is that because these people are so discriminated and really the lowest of society, they're frightened. They're frightened that if they tell you, I'm from such and such an estate, my family has so many members, I originated from Indonesia, that data might go to someone who's an authority, and then they'll be put in rumah merah. So you just put yourself in their shoes. If you were like this, you're not going to tell anyone how many members in your family, how many extended family members you have. they just don't tell. So I'm very skeptical about figures until somehow we can solve this problem of the undocumented in Sabah, and then we may be able to get some more accurate data about this. Underlying this issue is clearly the lack of attention to the fundamental rights of the child. The UN Declaration of Human Rights and the Convention of Rights of the Children, among others. And do you know that in 2014, the United Nations issued a declaration saying that in 10 years, the world, not Malaysia, the world will be cleared of statelessness. Next year is the 10-year marker. I have a feeling this is not going to happen. I'm sure you can work that out for yourself. All right? It's only a year away. And our undocumented and our stateless problem is growing. So I think that the UN needs to do some maybe recalculation about the dates and how they can achieve this. So we need to be more action-oriented because this is a man-made phenomenon that we're facing here. So in the reality, our families, our children are social outcasts, they're discriminated against, they're barred from many health facilities. When I go to plantation, the parents save up their sick kids till I get there. This is incredible, and I wondered how long can a child be sick? So when I go there, they ask me, can you take the child out to the rural health clinic? And the rural health clinics are amazing. I'm not talking about the city, but in rural areas, they really help these kids. Yeah, we pay for it, the plantation will pay. And I just go there and say, this kid is sick, and they take them first on the list. I think they're scared what Doctor just mentioned now about the disease, the spread of disease like TB or measles, all kinds of diseases. And they get in immediately, so I'm very happy with the rural health clinics and the way they'll help these undocumented kids. Other issues I'll come back to later. Second slide, please. So just to let you know about Etania, that's the Persatuan, Persatuan Pendidikan Kanak-Kanak Mata-Kanak Sabah is my Persatuan. We are only one of hundreds of Persatuans in Sabah. I'm just a small one, all right? There are many others on the East Coast and on the West Coast too, some from West Malaysia as well, who set up learning centers, yeah? We're not allowed to call them schools. We are forbidden to use the word school, but we use it all the time. So they are CLCs, Community Learning Center, or ALCs, we call Alternative Learning Centers. So I have a mixture of both, depending on how they developed over the years. We started in 2009, and we had one singular goal at that time, and that was to provide access to education for any child who cannot access Malaysian schooling. And my friends in the audience tonight who also have these schools, this was their initial aim at the beginning. We have about 1,000 kids in our school in 1 year, and we have 13 schools around Sabah. They're scattered along the west coast, Baluran area, Kalabakan, all over Sabah really. Okay, next slide, thanks. So, as I mentioned, our goal is access for kids. We want to provide a full and relevant curriculum. This is one thing I really hate in Sabah. People say to me, oh, you're working with the undocumented kids. Just give them the 3 M's, as we call in Bahasa Malaysia, membaca, mengira, and menulis, or in English, reading, writing, and arithmetic. What nonsense is this? This is discrimination, the ultimate. Every child, no matter whether you are undocumented, stateless, you're Malaysian or what, you're entitled to a full and quality education. I get very angry with people who say, oh, they're only undocumented. Just do that. So don't ever ask me about that topic because it will make me get really mad. And I'll talk about the curriculum as we go along. Yeah, we want our graduates to become good citizens. I don't want them to create social issues for Sabah. People say, oh, the prisons are full of them. That's nonsense, actually. Yes, there are some, but they're not full of them. I want them to be good contributing people who help their community and our society to become a better Sabah. And I believe if we educate them, as Dr. Heng just said now, they will become like this. And I have the proof over all these years of these kids becoming good citizens. Some of them, of course, go back to their home, not so much Filipinos, but Indonesian. Some of them go to university, some join the Indonesian Navy. I have boys in that. I have kids who are teachers, who are university educators. It's amazing. They're just the same. They're just the same as our children here. But you must give them the opportunity to get an education. And the last point is really important from me, and this stems a lot from COVID. I'll come back to that later. Okay, next slide, please. So some of the challenges that face the undocumented communities. I'm not going to go into all these, but I'm sure you understand them. But number 2, I'd just like to have a look at, because this fear of deportation, arrest, and being incarcerated in rumah merah, it's very real in their lives. Even small children, as old as 3, 4 years old, they know about this. So when they come to our schools, whatever age it might be, they know that one day one of their family or themselves could be caught like this. This is a pretty tragic event, and it happens in my families. I don't want to say the area, but there's one area in the interior that likes to capture my children and put them in rumah merah. There are other areas that are very supportive. I take Beaufort as a good example. Beaufort, the police department, the education department are very supportive, and they look after our children. But this other area has raids at like 1 a.m. in the morning and catches families. Children under 12 are not supposed to be caught unless they're with their family. There's one incident I recall from a school there where a mother had delivered a baby in the morning, and that night the community, the kampung, was raided, and she ran with her baby. Can you imagine her condition? She fell. Fortunately, one of the personnel realized the state she was in and picked her up and carried her back to her house. And I thought, yeah, they have a heart after all to look after this poor mother who just delivered her infant. All right, next slide. So the families know that they cannot access schools. They know this. They know they cannot access healthcare. But I must say a big thank you to the health department of Sabah. I don't know if it's Malaysia, but Sabah anyway. Because now we get immunization. And I don't even ask for it. One day in a school I have in Tenem, I went there and the nurses were all there immunizing the children. So I'm very proud to congratulate the health department, and I think it was under your time that this happened a few years ago, that many of the rural communities are now immunized against infectious diseases. Education, as I mentioned, there are hundreds of NGOs in Sabah now providing access, but there are still many more numbers of children who don't have access to schools. All right, next slide, please. What about our kids? Our kids come to school with a backpack full of challenges. When they enter school, you know, it's really incredible when you compare how they enter and when they leave. Yeah, they come to school, they're very shy. They have no confidence in themselves. They have no dignity at all. It's because that as an infant in the house, they never had time to discuss, or their parents don't know how to discuss it. The parents themselves are probably illiterate and never been to school. And the community's just been at them all the time from birth. So when they enter a school, they are really a very sad sight. And this is why, and maybe I'm a bit controversial here, I do not agree to undocumented children going to government schools. I do not. Not for the first 2 or 3 years, at least. After that, yes. I'm happy for them to go to government schools. But initially, they need to be in a community, a school, maybe it's a learning centre community, where people understand them, where they understand the background of the child, where they're coming from, where they can help this child grow as a person, to learn to respect themselves. They're with peers who are all experiencing the same situation, and teachers have to understand too, so that they can guide these kids. They can get this confidence and self-belief. It can come, but it takes at least 2 or 3 years. And after that, you see them blossom, and they can participate in competitions, all sorts of things that are going on amongst our learning centres. So I put a lot of emphasis on curriculum. Of course, being a teacher, this is my main area. And even though I've been teaching all my life in Sabah, in government schools and in private schools, our curriculum is completely different from what they receive in those schools because of the need of the child. You have to assess what this child needs for his or her future. Next slide, please. So the first point I'd just like to spend a bit of time on, our teachers are not trained. We don't have trained teachers. We can't afford their salaries, and they don't want to come to us anyway because they're not under the Malaysian Education Department. So we train them ourselves. And in 2015, we set up a coalition of learning centres, Sabah, whereby we call in teachers from anywhere in Sabah. In fact, they come from the pulau-pulau of the East Coast, they come from Ladakh, Sandakan, all over the place. Teachers can come in and for free receive training 2 or 3 times a year. At the beginning it was 4 times, but after COVID we haven't quite got back to that level yet. And then we call in experts in various fields. We ask the teachers, what do you need? What do you feel you're lacking in? So this teacher might say, oh, I need something on child protection. So I will call in people like Anna, or like Global Shepherds, or some organization that can talk about this. Or someone might want math. So I call in a maths expert, or art. I've called in Tian. I'm sure many of you know Tian, the famous Sabah artist. She's come and done training for me. So many areas. We've done robotics, we've done computer. It's endless because there's been so many trainings, right? So the teacher training is really important for my teachers because they don't have any background in teaching. But how I select them for their heart, for their empathy. I don't select them for academic ability. We can teach them. They can be taught all the academics, but you cannot teach them the empathy that has to come from within. And those are the ones that I select to be teachers. All right, next slide, please. So, where are we going? The first thing is there must be changes at the government level. There has to be changes in the ministries, especially Education Department. I have had a lot of incidents with the Sabah Education Department because of lack of understanding of the need to educate a child. Yeah, I've had schools shut down. Don't worry, I open them again the next day somewhere else. But they are shut down. My good friend had a school shut down one morning and she had to be out by noon. I'm sure many of you know her too here. But she's very smart. She opened again 2 centres in another place. We can overcome these problems. Next slide, please. And one other important issue here I want to look at is child protection. This is a very big issue because our kids are vulnerable. They have no rights. They have no one to contact if an incident happens to them on the plantation or in their school, and incidents do happen like this, yeah? So they experience all these social ills. On the surface, they are laughed at, snide remarks are made about them, they're exploited, they have no documentation to designate them with a country that protects them. All children must have a decent life, even though they are discriminated against. We have to teach them in school to have grit, to have determination. And that's one of my main concerns about the curriculum. So teachers are instilling these important things in the children. Last slide, please. So I began with, I'm sure you know about the Sustainable Development Goals of the UN, with SDG 4, which is about education. I began with that when they started in 2014, I think. But since then, a lot of things have happened in Sabah, and we've learned to work with other SDGs. For example, SDG 1, which was on poverty. I think SDG 12 was on inequality or something. Yeah? So there's a lot of these other SDGs. We must have equity for all. In our schools now, we have academic, 1/3. 1/3 is life skills, and 1/3 is living skills. In the Malaysian school, you have ECA, right? Your ECA is just a thing we do after. I used to do that because I was principal of a school here for a long time. So I know ECA was a tag-on thing after the curriculum. All kids had to do it. Not in these schools. This is very important because this is where the children learn self-belief, where they learn about dignity, when they learn that I can achieve something, I can do something. So what we started in 2019 were these vegetable farms. We have these all over in many of our schools. They're huge projects. So the families improve their nutrition and they get money from the sales, so improving their livelihood as well. At the top, we started a sewing program. And this school sells kaftans, baju kelawaya, all over Sabah and some to Johor as well. So the sewing program is a very effective program too. Of course, we have training for all of these projects. Yeah, you can't just throw the school into it. We also have now a bakery in a school in Kinarut, so the children make biscuits and sell them to get money for the school and for themselves. We have computer literacy and coding in several schools. There's another school that has one protein meal a day. So the parents cook the protein meal and the children, we know they're getting one good, healthy meal each day. We're starting soon an aquaponic program in another school that is sponsored by NGO as well. So, my goal now with the Etania School is to make sure our families are equipped with survival skills. Because in COVID, they struggled. If another incident happens, they have to learn to take control of their own life. They have to survive. I can't always visit them with food supplies. So that's my goal at the moment, is to make sure everyone has sustainable projects so that their future is safe and the children are protected. Thank you so much.